Hi there, Booktube. My name is Nathan, and I am the Rambling Reviewer. I call myself that because, well, in almost all my videos I tend to ramble on, and because in some videos I review things. Now today is not a review, but it may be rambly, because I'm going to be talking about veganism. Oh no. Um, Heavy topic there. Maybe I can cut my subscriber count in half. Okay, no, I'm actually doing a book tag. A while back like last year, Dane Cobain, who was a booktuber I watched for a fair while and then kind of fell out of. Nothing against Dane himself. It was more just, I started watching other booktubers. Some of the booktubers I started watching, I started interacting with on like a daily basis. Uh, my dad passed away. Um, so just a lot of stuff, and there are so many booktubers on YouTube that it is hard to keep all of them in your line of sight, if you will. But I've kind of restarted watching a couple of the stuff, and I saw that he had done a vegan tag, a booktube vegan tag, where the prompts are all vegan related, but the books themselves can be literally anything. And I thought I would go ahead and do this. And of course, I am a vegan. I've been a vegan for about 2.5 years now. I went vegan for animals, for animal rights. It was kind of a long process for me, although it wasn't, because I went vegan overnight. I wasn't one of those people who went vegetarian and vegan. Um, no disrespect towards people who do that. That's just what happened with me. But it was a long process because I had like years and years of thinking about veganism beforehand. Since I was a child, I thought about it, and then there were several times where I attempted to go vegetarian because of usually because of girlfriends actually, and I got a lot of exposure to veganism through I did an essay in college, or not an essay, it was a project. It was in a bio issues class, which was such a fun class. Um, we talked about various kinds of like philosophical and ethical issues that could arise from biological science, so cloning and genetics, race, and more. And at the end of the year, we got to choose a topic, and me and a partner, who was actually a partner who I'd worked with on previous classes, who I really liked, we chose to do a kind of a comparison of the pros and cons of a plant-based diet versus um, an omnivorous diet. There we go. And then I discussed it with a friend at work for a while because we'd have these little fun philosophical conversations about all kinds of stuff. And then I got exposure to BookTube because some of the booktubers I watched were vegan. But eventually I did go vegan because it was actually a video from a non-booktuber, a man named Alex O'Connor. He runs a channel called Cosmic Skeptic, which I will actually link down below. I really enjoy him. He does a lot of philosophy videos, a lot of religion, uh, stuff on atheism, stuff on veganism. And he did a TED Talk on veganism, which made me decide to go vegan. And it's been a great experience. I've learned a lot of new recipes. I feel better about my own ethics, about the way I live my life. I've gotten to try new cuisines. I've just really enjoyed it. So, but enough about that. I did want to give you my my kind of history with veganism, just so you know where my own uh, position on this comes from. But I do want to get into the prompts, and guess a warning ahead of time. I tend to get the words prompt and prop mixed up. If I do that, I apologize. But okay. So prompt number one is called tofu, which is not as good as seitan. I prefer seitan, but tofu's cool too. This is not tempeh. I hate tempeh, which is like a fermented soybean brick. It's so gross. It's so gross. I don't like tofu with the soy is like processed. It's like you can actually see the soybeans in it, and it looks nasty, and it tastes like sour milk. I can't do it. I can't do it. But tofu. Name a writer who is super versatile, which that is actually really accurate. Tofu, I recently made a... This is going to have a ton of digressions, I apologize. I recently made a cheese substitute. That was going to be a cheese ball, but I couldn't get it to firm up. But it was made out of tofu and a bunch of other ingredients, and it was delicious. It had like a very luscious, creamy cheese. Actually, I'll link that down below too, the recipe for that, 'cause that was so good. But anyways, I'm gonna go with Shakespeare. I mean, OG daddy of them all. Of course, he is a versatile writer. He wrote tons of sonnets, various plays, and history, tragedy, comedy. Um, he's able to really dig in deep to the psychology of his characters in books or in plays like Hamlet, and then able to have these beautiful, fantastical, mythological aspects and stuff like The Tempest and Midsummer Night's Dream. Uh, he's even able to make me laugh. Um, and I tend not to laugh in regards to reading. But I've not read as much Shakespeare as I'd like. I'm hoping to read more of him in the new year, and also maybe a play or two in December. Especially since that might be a little hard to get a lot of stuff to read in December, but it's also could be easy, shove one play in one day. I could read it in 2 or 3 hours. So, go Shakespeare. Nuts. Name a book that is batshit crazy. And I don't have this one on me, but I'm gonna go with The Vegetarian, um, which was talked about to death on Booktube, so I don't really think I need to discuss it too much more here, but it's about a woman who goes vegetarian. And it's set in Korea, so very meat-heavy culture. And actually, when I was figuring out my list, I didn't even think the fact that it's obviously topical to this tag. I just was trying to think of a batch crazy book, and it's like, oh, that. So, boom. Nutritional yeast. Name a book that is super cheesy, and I got to add that nutritional yeast is the god's yeast. It is delicious. If you've never tried it, it's like a deactivated baking yeast that you can add to your recipes, and it is essential. It makes stuff have a cheesy flavor. So it's a great thing. But I'm going to go with one that is not cheesy for a good thing, and it is. By the way, for some of these, I will be talking about short stories, and it is out of this the big book of science fiction, edited by Jeff Vandermeer. This is part of a series of big books that he's done, along with his wife, Anne Vandermeer. He did one on weird fiction, he's done some on fantasy, and he did this one on science fiction. But the story in here is called Let's Save the Universe by Stanislaw Lem, same person who wrote Solaris, which I have somewhere in this room, because I just checked it out, because Brandy at Booklectic, will be reading that in a few days actually, because we're going to start it at the beginning of December. But Let's Save the Universe, I hated this story. It's essentially like a flyer for saving the universe from human pollution and all the stupid things humans are doing on planets, like, making amusement parks on Mars and stuff like that. I don't really remember exactly what the examples are. That's just like something that could have been in there. But it's stuff like that. I just find it so very cheesy. Did not enjoy it that much. Beyond Burger, which I do prefer to Impossible Burger. Name a book that imitates another book. And for this one, this might be a little bit controversial. I promise it's not meant to be controversial. But I'm gonna go with the Quran by, well, by Muhammad. Um, One of my ongoing goals has been to read more holy texts. Not so much for the literary elements as much as for the, I guess you could say, my utopian ideals, where I think the world would just be a better place if people took the time to understand those who don't believe as they do. And I should note that it does not mean you cannot criticize. Uh, you should criticize. And there's a very hard, difficult line to walk, I think. But I think the starting point is having respect to read the works with an open mind. But of course, the Quran takes so much of the Bible. Takes stories, takes characters, takes ideas. Uh, so, the Quran. Which leads into the next question, which is, Quinoa, name a book. Name a good base book that everyone should read. And for this, I'm just going to go with the holy texts in general. The Bible, the Quran, the Book of Mormon, Bhagavad Gita, the Vedas, uh, the Upanishads, um, the Suttas. Uh, Reason being is that I think, in general, books don't need to be read. There's no real books that are like I'm not gonna say pull out Walt Whitman and say, oh, you have to read Walt Whitman. There's no reason for it. There's no, I guess, ethical constraints on reading. The closest thing I would say though is books that can bring that by reading them you can gain an understanding of people outside of your own people, I guess. And one of the hardest places to do that is in religion. Uh, and so, I think it's important that people read those books. I don't think I explained that as well as I could have, but Almond Milk. Name a book that goes well with a cup of tea. And for this, I'm going to go with a book I read back in 2020, I believe. Actually, now I have another idea of this. Hold on. I'm going to show two books for this one. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So, the first book I chose was Snow Child by Eowyn Levy. Eve. Not sure. This is a book I read back in, I think 2020. It's kind of a magical realist novel about a couple living in Alaska. They are Russian immigrants. I think it's set in like the late 1800s. And they have been trying to have children, and they can't. And then one day they find, it's 1920, they find a little girl, a snow child. And I just love this book. It uh, it is very emotional. I don't remember it super well, how it was written, but I just enjoyed it, so. And with the holiday season right around the corner, I thought this would be a great book to read with tea or a cup of hot cocoa. Uh, with almond milk, of course. Or oat, or soy, or coconut, or whatever. Um, but yeah, no job. The other book I just suddenly decided on, that I think would also be good for a cup of tea, but it's very different, is Moby Dick. Yeah, I actually think this would be a great book to read with a cup of tea. Especially in short bursts. When I first read this back in 2019, that might have been 2020 also, actually. Um, I would often come home from work, read a chapter or two, and then leave it. And I think that's the best way to read this book. Because if you read it in trying to get it finished really quickly, you're going to get annoyed by all the aggression. You're going to want Ishmael to get back to the effing point. Because, come on, we gotta go fight the whale. Some exciting stuff. And a lot of this book doesn't have that. Instead, it has contemplative prose about meandering bullshit. Entire chapters on the philosophical, I guess, aspects of the whaling ship's different tools and parts, or the platonic forms of the whales. I'm kind of jesting, but not really. That's how Ishmael narrates the story. Very much a very philosophical drive to it, which can get annoying. It can especially get annoying during the encyclopedic chapters, where it spends an entire chapter talking about different kinds of whales. That controversial chapter, Cetology. But it's my favorite book. Why? Because it is absolutely beautifully written. The prose in here is gorgeous. It's almost floating, like you're on the boat itself, and you're moving along, and seeing the whales out there, and you're talking to Ishmael as he rambles on incoherently. And I think this kind of book, it warrants some slow, contemplative reads. You start and you read 2 or 3 chapters, and then while you're doing it, you can drink your cup of coffee or tea or hot cocoa, and just let it take its time on you. Take time to read the prose. Take time to laugh at the humor, because the book is surprisingly funny. Like laugh out loud funny. And appreciate it for all of its weirdness. But don't go all in expecting Treasure Island. It's not that. Now for these next 3 prompts, it's kind of the 3 big reasons why people go vegan. And the first one is, of course, environmentalism. And it is to name a book about ours or another planet. And I'm going to go with Dune by Frank Herbert, which I read for the first time last year. Matthew over at Midnight Book Club and Steve Donahue read this in their kind of ongoing book club. And I absolutely enjoyed this. And I've since then read the second book in the series, Dune Messiah, which I liked, blasphemous though it may be, even more because I really appreciated how it got into Paul Atreides' psyche in that book. And for me, at least, it made him more likable at the end than he was at the beginning, which is really weird because at the end he's kind of become genocidal. So, but what I did love about this book world building and the attention to detail on the planet Arrakis, the dune, the desert world. Um, Frank Herbert does a magnificent job talking and laying out the details of Arrakis and of the the wider Imperium or Empire. I think it's just the Empire. I don't really remember what the term they use for their empire is. I think it's just the Empire. Imperium is Warhammer. Um, but this all attention to detail, the religious aspects, which I love, the environmental aspects. He spends a lot of time discussing the climate and how the climate created Dune itself, and the spice melange and how it is created, and the sandworms, and how this links into the Fremen culture and all these little aspects. And I just really loved it. So, yeah. I actually read this copy. My copy had no dust jacket, and I've got it in a box somewhere. I might get rid of it, honestly. It's not a special copy, it's just the copy that I read, and so it's got all my annotations in it. Because yes, I do annotate my books. Number 8 is Animal Rights, which is to name a book that's sympathetic towards animals. And for this one, I'm going to take a short story out of The Best of Cordelia Smith, who I believe is, right now, my favorite SF writer. He was writing in, I think, the 50s and 60s. And he wrote within a future history that's all what is this story this kind of dictatorship called the Lords and Ladies of Human Instrumentality, um and everything is perfect for humans, but there are non-humans and also criminal humans who are essentially treated as slaves. And the story is very much kind of hone in on these moral, societal issues. So how the AI are treated, how the criminals are treated. Um, in stories like Skinner's in Vain, that's a pretty dominant theme with the Haberman. And in stories like A Planet Named Sheol, where people are sent to a planet named Sheol to be tormented for essentially like millennia. Uh, but in so doing, they provide a service. They their bodies being infested by parasites create a drug essentially that is needed. But the story I want to talk about is Dead Lady of Clowntown. And in this story, it follows a woman who is a witch, who was genetically predisposed to be a witch. Um, and she finds an underground city with a dead lady who is inside of an android essentially, and a bunch of underpeople. Underpeople are they're animals whose minds have been put inside of a human body. They are almost entirely physically human, with some of them having some of their animal features still intact. Uh, like bull people being much larger, or sometimes having horns, or cat people being sleek. And she meets an underground religious movement surrounding a figure known as the Zone. D for dog, Zone for Zone, Joan of Arc. And the story is just wonderful. And it's weird. It's very, very weird. But it works. And the end has a very emotional aspect as the religious movement is cracked down, even though it is a peaceful religious moment. because the under people are not seen as people. They're just seen as animals, which are worked and then eventually killed. So, not exactly the same as animals, because these under people are more intelligent than actual modern day animals. But definitely a book that could be utilized in a video on V and speculative fiction, which is something I'd actually like to do. And finally, I don't have a book for this one. It's Health. Or I don't have it on me. And that is the name of a book that inspired you to be healthier mentally or physically. And I've not read many books on health. Probably should read more. Either physically or mentally. And this is kind of a cop-out, but I'm going to go with a book that was written by Peter Singer. So Peter Singer is famous as being a philosopher in utilitarianism. He wrote The Animal Liberation, is probably what he's most famous for. A very famous text on veganism. But I'm not going to talk about that one right now. I'm going to talk about one of his other books that I read years ago. It's called The Life You Can Save. And it is all about, it takes a central premise that we all use money for things that we don't need. Like books. Or shoes, or dining experiences when we could buy food that's cheaper that will still give us our needed nutrients, or video games, trips, travel, whatever, really. Better clothes. And those luxury items, we could use our money to go towards people who are in dire situations, people who are starving, people who are dying of preventable disease. And he uses a paradox, where he talks about a young child drowning in a lake. And the lake is incredibly shallow, but he is a small child, or she is a small child. And so it's like up to their neck, and they're ready to go under. But for you, an adult, you can just waltz right in, it'll be at their chest, say, and get the child out of there. Save the child's life. But at the moment, you're wearing a suit. A nice suit, with nice shoes. Which could be several $100s, or even more. And for the premise of the paradox, you have to get in there quickly, so you can't be changing or going home to change. You have to get in there and save the kid. Do you? Now, basically, everybody would automatically say, of course, it would be an atrocious saying not to save the kid. In fact, we have, you see, in philosophy, there's a term for that kind of people. And that kind of person is an asshole. But then the paradox comes, well, what's really the difference, aside from geography, between you saving the kid in the pool and you saving a kid in Africa who's dying of malaria? Or a hypothetical future kid in Africa who may, in the future, die of malaria. And, automatically you want to say, okay, well, because there are other people who could save the kid if they're in Africa, but then you also start to ask the question, well, what if there's 10 of you at the lake? If there's 10 of you at the lake, but all 10 of you don't get in the water, does that mean that each of you is equally responsible in that case? It's something to ponder. And my own position on this is basically that everyone doesn't live as ethical of a life as they really should or really could. We do have a responsibility to do more. But that gets into the actual read I put this on here. which is that for me at least, it feels good to do that. I haven't gotten to do it as much as I used to, so I'm not making as much money as I used to. Um, but for me at least, giving charity does oftentimes help my own mental health and make me feel better. Uh, which is another reason to potentially do it. So that is going to be my answer to this, in that it is a mentally rewarding experience to give. Whatever you can. Uh, I'm not naive, and I do understand that most people can't give that much. Um, and that a lot of people worry about, oh, well, what is a good, how do I know that the charity I'm giving to is good? How do I know they don't use their money for frivolous shit, or that all the money that I pay in goes to where it needs to go? And I definitely understand that. For the record, the writer of that book, Peter Singer, did make a website called The Life You Can Save that looks into the best charities, and you can cross-examine it with charity advisor websites and see that the charities that he puts up overwhelmingly get like 100 uh, percent or 5 star. I can't remember if it's 5 stars or 100% or whatever, but they are like the top of the reliability and transparency indexes. So, and I'll also link that down below if anyone's interested. The final prompt though is cross contamination, which is to tag friends. Now, I'm only going to tag two people for this because they are both vegan, and those two people are Steve Donahue and Michael K. Vaughn. But if anyone else is watching this who is vegan, or who is not, but still wants to take part in this tag, feel free to take this as your tag into this tag. So yeah, I hope you all having a great day, Booktuber. I hope you're looking forward to Christmas. And I need to go because this has been going on for way too long. All right, bye, Booktube.